Aeschylus was an ancient Greek tragedian. He is also the first whose plays still survive, the others are Sophocles and Euripides. He is often described as the father of tragedy. Critics and scholars' knowledge of the genre begins with his work, and understanding of earlier tragedies is largely based on inferences from his surviving plays. According to Aristotle, he expanded the number of characters in theatre to allow conflict among them, whereas characters previously had interacted only with the chorus. Only 7 of his estimated 70 to 90 plays have survived, and there is a long-standing debate regarding his authorship of one of these plays, Prometheus Bound, which some believe his son Euphoron actually wrote. Fragments of some other plays have survived in quotes, and more continue to be discovered on Egyptian papyrus, often giving us surprising insights into his work. He was probably the first dramatist to present plays as a trilogy. His Orestia is the only ancient example of the form to have survived. At least one of his plays was influenced by the Persians' second invasion of Greece. This work, The Persians, is the only surviving classical Greek tragedy concerned with contemporary events, and a useful source of information about its period. The significance of war in ancient Greek culture was so great that Aeschylus' epitaph commemorates his participation in the Greek victory at Marathon, while making no mention of his success as a playwright. Despite this, Aeschylus' work, particularly the Orestia, is acclaimed by today's literary academics. Life. There are no reliable sources for the life of Aeschylus. Aeschylus was born in c. 525 BC in Eleusis, a small town about 27 kilometers northwest of Athens, which is nestled in the fertile valleys of western Attica, though the date is most likely based on counting back 40 years from his first victory in the Great Dionysia. His family was wealthy and well-established. His father, Euphoron, was a member of the Eupatridae, the ancient nobility of Attica, though this might be a fiction that the ancients invented to account for the grandeur of his plays. As a youth, he worked at a vineyard until, according to the 2nd century AD geographer Pausanias, the god Dionysus visited him in his sleep and commanded him to turn his attention to the nascent art of tragedy. As soon as he woke from the dream, the young Aeschylus began to write a tragedy, and his first performance took place in 499 BC, when he was only 26 years old. He would win his first victory at the city Dionysia in 484 BC. In 510 BC, when Aeschylus was 15 years old, Cleomenes I expelled the sons of Pisistratus from Athens, and Cleisthenes came to power. Cleisthenes' reforms included a system of registration that emphasized the importance of the deme over family tradition. In the last decade of the 6th century, Aeschylus and his family were living in the deme of Eleusis. The Persian Wars would play a large role in the playwright's life and career. In 490 BC, Aeschylus and his brother Cynaegirus fought to defend Athens against Darius I's invading Persian army at the Battle of Marathon. The Athenians emerged triumphant, a victory celebrated across the city-states of Greece. Cynaegirus, however, died in the battle, receiving a mortal wound while trying to prevent a Persian ship retreating from the shore, for which his countrymen extolled him as a hero. In 480, Aeschylus was called into military service again, this time against Xerxes I's invading forces at the Battle of Salamis, and perhaps, too, at the Battle of Plataea in 479. Ion of Chios was a witness for Aeschylus's war record and his contribution in Salamis. Salamis holds a prominent place in The Persians, his oldest surviving play, which was performed in 472 BC and won first prize at the Dionysia. Aeschylus was one of many Greeks who had been initiated into the Eleusinian Mysteries, a cult to Demeter based in his hometown of Eleusis. As the name implies, members of the cult were supposed to have gained some secret knowledge. Firm details of specific rites are sparse, as members were sworn under the penalty of death not to reveal anything about the mysteries to non-initiates. Nevertheless, according to Aristotle, some thought that Aeschylus had revealed some of the cult's secrets on stage. Other sources claim that an angry mob tried to kill Aeschylus on the spot, but he fled the scene. Heraclides of Pontus asserts that the audience tried to stone Aeschylus. He then took refuge at the altar in the orchestra of the theatre of Dionysus. At his trial, he pleaded ignorance. He was acquitted, with the jury sympathetic to the wounds that Aeschylus and Cynaegeirus had suffered at Marathon. According to the 2nd century AD author Aelian, Aeschylus's younger brother Amanias helped to acquit Aeschylus by showing the jury the stump of the hand that he lost at Salamis, where he was voted bravest warrior. The truth is that the award for bravery at Salamis went not to Aeschylus a brother but to Amanias of Palana. Aeschylus travelled to Sicily once or twice in the 470s BC, having been invited by Hierai of Syracuse, a major Greek city on the eastern side of the island, and during one of these trips he produced the women of Etna and restaged his Persians. By 473 BC, after the death of Phrynichus, one of his chief rivals, Aeschylus was the yearly favorite in the Dionysia, winning first prize in nearly every competition. In 472 BC, Aeschylus staged the production that included the Persians, with Pericles serving as Chorigos. In 458 BC, he returned to Sicily for the last time, visiting the city of Gela where he died in 456 or 455 BC. Valerius Maximus wrote that he was killed outside the city by a tortoise dropped by an eagle which had mistaken his head for a rock suitable for shattering the shell of the reptile. Pliny, in his Naturalis Historiae, adds that Aeschylus had been staying outdoors to avoid a prophecy that he would be killed by a falling object. Aeschylus's work was so respected by the Athenians that after his death, his were the only tragedies allowed to be restaged in subsequent competitions. His sons Euphoron and Euion and his nephew Philocles also became playwrights. The inscription on Aeschylus's gravestone makes no mention of his theatrical renown, commemorating only his military achievements. According to Castoriadis, the inscription on his graveyard signifies the primary importance of belonging to the city, of the solidarity that existed within the collective body of citizen soldiers. Personal life: Aeschylus married and had 2 sons, Euphoron and Euion, both of whom became tragic poets. Euphoron won first prize in 431 in competition against both Sophocles and Euripides. His nephew, Philocles, was also a tragic poet, and won first prize in the competition against Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. A scholiast has noted that Philocles' Tereus was part of his Pandionish tetralogy. Aeschylus had at least 2 brothers, Cynaegeirus and Amanias. Works: The roots of Greek drama are in religious festivals for the gods, chiefly Dionysus, the god of wine. During Aeschylus's lifetime, dramatic competitions became part of the city Dionysia in the spring. The festival opened with a procession, followed with a competition of boys singing dithyrambs and culminated in a pair of dramatic competitions. The first competition Aeschylus would have participated in consisted of 3 playwrights each presenting 3 tragic plays followed by a shorter comedic satyr play. A second competition of 5 comedic playwrights followed, and the winners of both competitions were chosen by a panel of judges. Aeschylus entered many of these competitions in his lifetime, and various ancient sources attribute between 70 and 90 plays to him. Only 7 tragedies have survived intact. The Persians, 7 against Thebes, the Suppliants, the trilogy known as the Orestia, consisting of the 3 tragedies Agamemnon, the Libation Bearers and the Eumenides, together with Prometheus Bound. With the exception of this last play, the success of which is uncertain, all of Aeschylus's extant tragedies are known to have won first prize at the city Dionysia. The Alexandrian Life of Aeschylus claims that he won the first prize at the city Dionysia 13 times. This compares favorably with Sophocles' reported 18 victories, and dwarfs the 5 victories of Euripides. who is thought to have written roughly 90 plays. Trilogies. One hallmark of Aeschylean dramaturgy appears to have been his tendency to write connected trilogies, in which each play serves as a chapter in a continuous dramatic narrative. The Oresteia is the only extant example of this type of connected trilogy, but there is evidence that Aeschylus often wrote such trilogies. The comic satyr plays that follow his trilogies also drew upon stories derived from myths. For example, the Oresteia's satyr play Proteus treated the story of Menelaus, a detour in Egypt on his way home from the Trojan War. Based on the evidence provided by a catalogue of Aeschylean play titles, scholia, and play fragments recorded by later authors, it is assumed that 3 other of his extant plays were components of connected trilogies, 7 Against Thebes being the final play in an Oedipus trilogy, and The Suppliant and Prometheus Bound each being the first play in a Danaid trilogy and Prometheus trilogy, respectively. Scholars have moreover suggested several completely lost trilogies derived from known play titles. A number of these trilogies treated myths surrounding the Trojan War. 1, collectively called the Aeschylus, comprised the titles Myrmidons, Nereids and Phrygians. Another trilogy apparently recounts the entry of the Trojan ally Memnon into the war, and his death at the hands of Achilles, the award of the arms. The Phrygian women and the Salaminian women suggest a trilogy about the madness and subsequent suicide of the Greek hero Ajax. Aeschylus also seems to have written about Odysseus, a return to Ithaca after the war, in a trilogy consisting of the Soul Raisers, Penelope and the Bone Gatherers. Other suggested trilogies touched on the myth of Jason and the Argonauts, the life of Perseus, the birth and exploits of Dionysus, and the aftermath of the war portrayed in 7 Against Thebes. Sons of the Seven.